The day I was discharged from the hospital, I sat in the lobby for 6 long hours. I held my little bag, waiting, thinking maybe they got stuck in traffic. Maybe they were coming around the corner any minute now. But my phone never rang. Not once. No one came. The nurses were kind. They kept checking in on me, offering me water, trying to reassure me. But as the sun dipped lower and the lobby emptied out, it became clear. I wasn't being picked up. I wasn't being missed. By nightfall, they had no choice. A care home was called. They packed up my few things, helped me into a van, and off I went. No goodbye, no explanation for my own children. Just silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. So I picked up a pen. I opened my will, and I rewrote it. Every dollar, every photo, every memory, I gave it to someone who actually saw me. Someone who stayed when everyone else walked away. My name is Rose Franklin. I'm 76 years old. I spent most of my life working as a librarian. I've always loved books, the way they hold stories, keep secrets, and never forget you. I'm also a widow. My husband Thomas passed away 12 years ago. We were married for almost 40 years. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who never forgot to warm my coffee cup on cold mornings. When he died, something in me changed. But I stayed strong because I still had my children. I have 3 of them. 2 sons and 1 daughter. I raised them the best way I knew how, with open hands and an open heart. I stayed up nights with them when they were sick, helped with homework even when I was dead tired, skipped meals some weeks just to make sure they had what they needed. And I never asked for much. Just love. Just to be remembered. I believed in loyalty. In keeping your word. In family standing by each other. Not just in the good times, but in the hard times too. I thought if I gave everything I had, they'd always be there. But life, well, it has a way of surprising you, and not always in the ways you hope. That's what this story is about. Not just about what happened to me, but about what silence feels like when it comes from the people you love the most. If you're watching this right now, I want to thank you for giving me a little of your time. It means more than I can say. Please tell me, where are you listening from? Are you watching with a warm cup of tea? Sitting in your living room? Maybe alone? Maybe with memories sitting beside you like I have? And if you've got a story, something sitting heavy on your heart, please share it. Leave a comment, or send me a message using the email in the description. I read every single one. I may not know you, but I care. Because sometimes, we just need someone to hear us, to know we're still here. Before everything changed, I had a quiet little life. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. I lived in a small house just outside town. Not too big, just enough space for me, my garden, and my memories. Every morning, I'd wake up early, even if I didn't have anywhere to be. I liked watching the sunrise through my kitchen window. The light would hit the table just right, and I'd sit there with my tea, listening to the birds outside. I had a patch of roses that I tended to with more love than most people could understand. Each one reminded me of someone. Thomas, my mother, old friends long gone. My books were my closest company. I read everything, history, poetry, even the same mystery novels over and over again. When I was lost in a story, I never felt alone. My kids, they weren't around much, but I didn't complain. My youngest would call on Sundays, sometimes he'd forget, but when he did call, I cherished every second. My eldest sent flowers on Mother's Day. Not a phone call, just a card with a signature. Still, I kept every one. Lined them up on my dresser like trophies of love I had to earn. And the silence in between? I made excuses for it. I told myself they were busy, work, families, life pulling them in every direction. I said, they mean well, more times than I can count. I clung to memories, their laughter as kids, the way they used to climb into bed when they were scared, the homemade cards they once gave me. Those memories? They kept me going. Even when the phone stayed quiet, even when birthdays passed without a call, even when I started to feel like a chapter they'd already closed. Still, I smiled through it. I told people I was doing just fine, because I believed, deep down, that they'd be there if it really mattered. But sometimes the people you'd give your last breath for, forget to even show up when you need a ride home. At first, the changes were so small, I barely noticed them. The Sunday phone calls from my youngest started coming later in the day. Then every other week. Then, sometimes not at all. When I'd call him back, it would ring, and then go to voicemail. Hey, I'll call you later, Mom. he'd text. But later never came. My daughter? My middle child, she used to check in at least once a week. But then the texts got shorter. Busy mom, all good here. That's all she'd say. No, how are you? No, do you need anything? Just a cold wall of words that looked like care, but didn't feel like it. And my oldest? He lived just 20 minutes away. I hadn't seen his face in nearly 5 months. Not even a knock on the door. Not a birthday card. Not a cup of coffee shared on my porch. I tried not to make a big deal of it. I didn't want to be a burden. I told myself, they're just busy. Work, kids, life, you know how it is. But inside, it hurt. One day, I called to ask for help picking up my prescriptions. It was just a little thing. The pharmacy was a bit too far for me to walk. My legs had been bothering me, my back too. I was trying to be strong, but I knew I needed a little help. I left a message for my son. Then a text to my daughter. The answer came in one short message. Can't, Mom, too busy today, maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. I sat there with my list of medications on the kitchen table, staring at them like they might walk themselves home. I felt silly, embarrassed, alone. And yet, I didn't get angry. I didn't yell. I blamed myself. Maybe I was too needy. Maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I'd failed them somewhere along the way. I started to pull back. I didn't want to bother them anymore. I stopped asking for help. I told them I was fine, even when I wasn't. I smiled on the phone when they did call, pretending everything was okay. I thought maybe if I just gave them more space, they'd come around again. That the kids I once knew, the ones who'd run to me with scraped knees and bedtime fears, would come back. But all I got in return was silence. And that silence started to feel louder than any words ever could. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen trying to fix myself a little dinner. Nothing fancy, just some soup and toast. I remember feeling dizzy, like the room was spinning even though I was standing still. I gripped the counter, tried to steady myself, but everything went black. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed. Bright lights above me, a soft beeping sound nearby, nurses moving around. One of them noticed I was awake and smiled gently. You're safe, sweetheart. You fainted. We've got you. There was an IV in my arm. My head ached, and my chest felt tight, not from pain but from fear. Where were my children? Who had called the ambulance? Who knew I was here? I kept glancing at the door, expecting someone, anyone, to walk through. I asked the nurse, has anyone called my family? She said, yes, ma'am. We left messages for all 3 numbers you gave us. So I waited. I thought surely once they heard, they'd drop everything. I imagined my daughter rushing in with her coat still on, asking if I was okay. I pictured my son walking in saying, Mom, you scared us. I even hoped my oldest might just show his face. But the hours ticked by. Morning turned to afternoon. Nurses changed shifts. Meals were brought and taken away. I kept my phone beside me, watching the screen light up, but it was only automated messages, a pharmacy reminder, a weather alert. Not one text. Not one missed call. Nothing. The nurse came back in and said, good news, you're stable. You're ready to go home. Is someone coming to pick you up? I smiled, still trying to believe the best. Yes, I think so. They just haven't made it yet. So I got dressed slowly, folded my hospital gown, brushed my hair the best I could, and sat there, waiting. 1 hour, then 2, then 4. Still, no one came. My smile faded, my heart sank, and somewhere in those silent hours I stopped pretending. No one was coming. Not for me. The nurse came back again, this time her face a little more serious. I'm sorry, ma'am, we have to discharge you. We've tried the numbers again, no answer. There's a care home we work with. They can take you for a few days until someone can come. I nodded. What else could I do? And that's how I left the hospital. Not in a warm car with familiar voices, but in a van with strangers, my bag on my lap and a lump in my throat that I couldn't swallow. That moment, that silence, was the beginning of a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. After the hospital discharged me, there was nowhere else for me to go. They had done all they could. I was stable, healthy enough to leave. But where was I supposed to go if no one came for me? The nurse came in quietly. She sat on the edge of the bed and said, Miss Franklin, we've called your family again. Still no answer. We don't want to leave you alone, so we've arranged a temporary stay at a care home nearby. A care home. That's a place people go when they're no longer wanted at home. That's how it felt, like I was being handed off. They packed my things into a small hospital bag, my slippers, my coat, a book I hadn't even finished reading. A transportation van pulled up. The driver didn't speak much. He just loaded my bag and helped me into the back seat. And just like that, I was on my way. No hugs. No, we're so glad you're okay. No, let's get you home, Mom. Just silence. I sat in that van looking out the window, watching familiar streets blur by. I passed the bakery where I used to take my daughter for cookies, the park where my sons flew their kites, my own neighborhood, just a few miles away, untouched, unvisited, as if I no longer belonged there. When we arrived at the care home, the staff were kind. They smiled, helped me settle in. The room was clean, small. The bed creaked a little when I sat down. The ceiling was made of white plastic tiles, and I remember staring up at them thinking, this isn't mine. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. I didn't cry. Not right away. I was too tired, too numb, too stunned. But that night, when the lights were off and the hallway outside was quiet, I broke. I lay there, in a bed that wasn't mine, under blankets that didn't smell like home. And I cried like a child. Not for the room, or the bed, or even the hospital. I cried because I finally understood something no mother ever wants to believe. I had been left behind, forgotten. Not because they couldn't reach me, but because they didn't try. The betrayal wasn't loud, it wasn't shouted. It came in silence, in stillness, in the soft sound of a phone that never rang. And in that silence, my heart began to harden. Not out of anger, but out of hurt. A deep, aching hurt that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Lying there in that care home bed, I started thinking about everything. Not just what had happened that day, but the years before it. Every little moment, every sacrifice, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I kissed, every meal I made when I was too tired to stand. And I asked myself, did I do something wrong? Was I too strict when they were growing up? Too soft? Did I say something that pushed them away? Was I too quiet? Too loud? Did I become boring to them? Was I just a piece of furniture in the background of their busy lives? It's a terrible thing. To be a mother and question your worth to your own children. I started wondering, did they think I didn't matter anymore? That because I had a few more wrinkles, moved a little slower, forgot things now and then, I had somehow become invisible? I went over memories in my mind, one by one. The birthdays I made special, the school meetings I never missed, the way I cheered them on through heartbreaks, jobs, and raising their own kids. And still I was left there. Like I didn't count. There's a special kind of pain that comes with silence from people who once used to call you mommy. A deep ache that doesn't show on your face but pulls heavy at your heart. I felt guilt. Like maybe I'd expected too much. Like maybe I was the one being selfish, wanting a little love back after a lifetime of giving it. I felt shame, like maybe I wasn't good enough anymore to be loved the way I needed. Like maybe I'd been replaced by their new lives, their families, their plans. I tried to remind myself of who I was. Rose Franklin, a woman who'd worked hard, who loved her family more than life, who never asked for much, just a little love, a little time. But in that room, with only the hum of the air vent and the ticking of the hallway clock, it was hard to feel like I mattered. I felt like a book they once loved, but had put back on the shelf and forgotten. And it hurt, more than I can explain. Then came Julia. She was one of the night nurses at the care home, not flashy or loud, just gentle, real. Maybe in her mid-30s. Her eyes always looked a little tired, like someone who had seen too much pain and still chose to show up with kindness anyway. She came into my room one night, just after midnight. I was lying there, staring at the ceiling like I had been for hours. I hadn't said much to anyone that day. I didn't feel like talking. What would I say? That my own family had left me behind like a bag of old clothes? She came in quietly, holding a cup of warm tea. No questions, no forced smile, just presence. She placed it on my bedside table and sat down on the edge of the bed. "You haven't touched your dinner," she said softly. I shrugged. Not very hungry. She didn't push me, she just sat there. And after a minute she did something no one had done in days. She reached over and gently took my hand. Her hand was warm, firm, kind. And just that one small touch, it opened the floodgates. I broke down. Quiet tears at first, then deep sobs I didn't even know were in me. She didn't ask me to stop. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She just sat there, holding my hand, brushing back the hair from my forehead like a mother would do for her child. When I could finally speak, I whispered, "They didn't come for me, not one of them." She didn't gasp. She didn't say, "How awful." She just nodded. Like she already understood that kind of pain. "You're not forgotten," she said. Her voice was steady. "True. You matter. You still matter." And for the first time in days, I believed it. Julia didn't need to fix anything. She didn't have to. Her kindness, simple, quiet, and consistent, was more powerful than any apology I never got. Every night after that, she'd stop by just to check in. She'd bring an extra cookie from the kitchen. She'd ask what book I was reading. She'd listen. Really listen. When I told her stories about my garden or my husband or how my youngest used to draw pictures of superheroes and tape them to the fridge, she made me feel like a person again. Not a patient, not a number, not a burden, just Rose. And in that moment of grace, with her by my side, something inside me began to shift. The pain was still there. But now there was also a spark. A reminder that even in the darkest places, someone could still show up. And that meant maybe I could still show up for myself too. That night, after Julia left my room and turned off the light, I sat up in bed and stared at the window. The moonlight poured in soft and quiet, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. I didn't have strength in my body the way I used to, but my mind, it was still sharp. In my heart, though bruised, still knew what was right. So I reached over, opened the drawer in the nightstand, and pulled out the small folder I'd kept with me. Inside was my old will. I had written it years ago, back when I believed my children would do right by me. When I trusted they would carry on the love and values their father, and I had tried so hard to teach them. I looked at each name on that page. My children, their spouses. I had left everything to them. The house, the savings, my jewelry, even my recipes, written out on cards yellowed with time. And for what? I thought about that hospital lobby, the unanswered phone, the van that carried me away like a forgotten suitcase. I thought about how not one of them had called, visited, or even asked if I was still breathing. And I picked up a pen. That pen felt heavier than it should have. Like it knew this wasn't just a signature. This was a statement. A stand. I crossed out names with a hand that trembled but didn't stop. Then I added one name. Julia. Not because she asked. Not because she expected anything, but because she had shown me something no one else had. Care without condition. Presence without pity. A reminder that I was still here and still worthy. The next morning I asked the front desk if they had a computer I could use. They did. I sat there for almost an hour, slowly typing into that search bar. Estate lawyer near me. I read reviews, looked at websites. I wasn't rushing, I was choosing. I found a lawyer named Mr. Simons. He specialized in elder law, and something about his website made me feel at ease. I called, explained my situation. He was kind, patient, said he'd come to me. 2 days later we met in the quiet little sitting area of the care home. I told him everything, my story, my decision, my wishes. He didn't blink, just nodded and took notes. Together we rewrote everything. I created a new will, one that reflected not just fairness, but truth. I set up protections for myself. I wrote letters. I made my voice clear, even if I wasn't around to speak it. Then I told Julia. She cried. She told me she didn't need anything, but I told her this wasn't about need, it was about thanks. About honoring the one person who reminded me of who I was when everyone else had forgotten. That moment wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about money. It was about dignity. Reclaiming my name, my worth, my story. And from that day forward, I stood a little taller. Once everything was signed and made official, I sat with the truth in my heart. It felt heavy, but not in a bad way. It was a good kind of weight, the kind you feel when you finally put both feet on solid ground after drifting too long. I didn't want to fight with anyone. I didn't want drama or yelling or bitter phone calls. I just wanted to be heard, even if they never listened. I wanted to leave behind something that spoke louder than silence. Something that made it clear I was not invisible. So I wrote a letter. Not long, not angry, just honest. It said, "To my children, I needed you and you weren't there. I waited at the hospital, I sat in silence, and you never came. I gave you everything, time, love, sacrifice. But when I needed even the smallest thing, you chose silence. Because of that, I've chosen to remember the person who remembered me." My will has changed, my heart has changed, and I hope someday you understand why. I didn't sign it with bitterness, I signed it with peace. I mailed it, one copy to each of them. I didn't check for a response, I didn't wait for a knock on the door or a sudden apology, because it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. The first few days after sending the letters, I kept wondering, will they be angry? Will they show up with excuses? Will they call, crying, trying to undo what they've done? But none of that happened, and that was all the answer I needed. No arguments, no fights, just silence, the same silence they gave me in the hospital lobby. But this time, the silence didn't hurt. This time, I filled that silence with peace. I had taken back my voice. I had drawn a line with love, not hate, with clarity, not confusion. And as strange as it sounds, I slept better that night than I had in years. Life after everything, it didn't turn out the way I expected. But sometimes, the life you never planned becomes the one that finally feels like yours. I stayed in the care home for a little while longer, just until I felt strong enough to live on my own again. The staff became like family. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose, or maybe the kind that chooses you when you need it most. And Julia? She didn't disappear. Even after her shift changed and she was moved to another wing, she still came to visit me every week, every Tuesday afternoon, without fail. She'd bring a deck of cards, or a small bouquet of wildflowers from the farmer's market, or sometimes just herself and a story from her day. We'd sit by the window, sipping tea, playing rummy, or talking about books. She started calling me her wise woman, and I started calling her my bonus daughter. It made us both smile. Eventually, with the help of Mr. Simons and a few good folks from the care home, I found a small apartment not far away. Quiet, cozy, with a view of trees that reminded me of my old garden. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home in a way that my big old house never did, once the love inside it disappeared. My days found a new rhythm. Mornings with warm coffee and soft music, afternoons reading or writing in my journal, evenings with simple meals, soft blankets, and no one asking for more than I had to give. There was no chaos, no pretending, no waiting by the phone, just me, and peace. What once felt like loneliness slowly turned into something else. Space. Freedom. A stillness that allowed me to hear my own thoughts, to heal parts of myself I didn't even know were bruised. The silence I once feared became something sacred. I used to think family was everything, and maybe it is, but only if it's the kind of family that shows up, that holds your hand when you're scared, that remembers your name not just on holidays but when you're hurting. I found that in Julia. In the quiet, in myself. And that's what made me whole again. I've had a lot of time to think, to sit in the quiet, and listen to what life has tried to teach me. And here's what I've learned. You can pour your whole heart into people. Raise them. Protect them. Stand by them through every storm. And sometimes, they still won't be there when you need them. That's not because you weren't enough. That's not your fault. It never was. People make choices. And some choices hurt more than words can say. But I learned that love, real love, isn't about keeping score. It's not something you earn by being perfect. It's not something you're owed because you gave everything. Love should never be a transaction. It should be a gift, freely given and gently returned. And age is not a weakness. It's not something to be pitied or pushed aside. Age is power. It's memory, it's survival, it's wisdom you can't buy, and strength you can't fake. It should be honored, not silenced. I used to think the quiet meant I had been forgotten. But now I know. The quiet was giving me space to grow again, to bloom in a new way, even at this age. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like I did, invisible, overlooked, left behind, I want you to know, you're still here. You still matter. And your story isn't over. To anyone listening today, if you've ever felt forgotten by the ones who should have remembered you, I see you. If your heart's ever been broken by your own blood, I hear you. If you've been left in silence and had to rebuild from nothing, I stand with you. I hope my story brought you comfort, or maybe courage, maybe just the reminder that your voice matters, no matter how many people try to silence it. Tell me your truth in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to hold space for you, the way Julia held space for me. And if you think this message could help someone who's feeling small or tired or forgotten, share it with them. Because no one deserves to feel alone in this world. They left me behind. But I rose, quietly, with grace. And I wrote a new ending, one filled with peace, dignity, and strength. And you can too. Your story, it's still being written, and I can't wait to see how strong the next chapter will be. Thank you for listening to me today. Please like, subscribe, and share, not just the video, but the hope. Because sometimes, the truth is all we need to find our way back home. Thank you for watching. See you next time.